Hello and welcome to this buildingSMART room session as part of the buildingSMART International Standards Summit, Rome 2023. Thank you for joining. My name is Laura and I will be your moderator today. This session is titled Airport Railway Infra Room Joint Session bSDD. The speaker you will hear are on the screen. Oops. The session is scheduled to last an hour and a half. The session is being recorded and will be made available in the replay session of the event as soon as possible. Before I hand over to our speaker, I would like to remind you that this is a hybrid event. For online attendees, your microphone will remain muted for the duration of this session. If you wish to ask a question, please use the chat box in the control panel. For those in the room, please try to keep the background noise to a minimum and raise your hand if you wish to make a comment and ask a question. I would also like to bring to your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent and standards that are developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding and accessible to all. Please take note of our antitrust code of conduct. Now I would like to hand over to the team.
Hello, welcome everyone. I guess it is a joint session and we will start with some presentations, but we actually really want this session to be more of a workshop. So we're really interested in your input as well as we start the discussion in a minute. But what we figured we'd do first is start with a short introduction of the speakers, because as you could see, there were a lot of speakers, but that was just because those were the people that came together in preparation for this session after we came to the conclusion in Montreal that we needed to get together to discuss the entities that have overlap or are common, whatever you want to call them, in the different disciplines. So we started with the railway room, and they were very excited to get this going, and it's great to have you all here and get the discussion started. So what we'll do is the first 30 minutes, we'll have a short introduction of the different rooms, so to speak, if there is an introduction. And then we want to use, or go over some example use cases, identify some common entities that at least we think we need to discuss, and then go through them with you guys to see how to move forward with those common entities. So to start with the airport room, the first four, Christoph is not here today, are from the airport room. Maya and I are from Schiphol, Amsterdam Airport. From NACO, we have Mike and Gerard. Auckland Airport is not here, unfortunately, but Karl Fitzpatrick has been a huge asset to the project so far. And then Christoph, who is at the summit, but in another session right now from Vienna Airport, has been working on the airport entities project. Again, that's us. Welcome. And the thing that we ran into with airport-specific objects is that today there is no clear and consistent schema for airport-specific objects. So what we want to do with this project, which we've been working on for a couple of years now, is create clear agreements within the airport community to allow airports to just work with the necessary part of the IFC schema. And we want to do that by adding an airport domain to the buildingSMART data dictionary. Why we want to do that is to ensure that the data can be consistently understood and used to improve the management of airports. Like I said, a lot of objects cannot be identified today. People will create their own entities, their own definitions, and it's not clear through asset lifecycle management what we are talking about. Looking at asset lifecycle management, we have a lot of stakeholders. We have designers, we have contract parties, we have asset owners, and they all work, or they should all be working with the same model. So we want to increase the accuracy and reliability of data across all airports and build a shared understanding. And looking ahead for at least the airport room, we also want to use this as like a basis for future BSI projects from the airport room. Some topics that are very interesting right now are sustainability, facility management, fire safety, and so on. And we need other rooms to get those projects started. But from the airport specific perspective, we need to identify the airport specific objects first and then take the next steps. So the future goals of the airport room, like I said, we want to further develop information standardization, but at the same time, we also want to position ourselves better within the aviation industry. We have Vienna Airport, Auckland Airport, and Schiphol Airport, and as you all know, there's way more airports within the world, and we want them to get involved and help with this project. So we want to connect to international aviation organizations, and why we're here today is to also connect and collaborate with the other rooms. So we have the railway room here today, the infra room, and I'm sure some of you, or I hope some of you, are also representing the other rooms to get some of these topics in discussion. To give you an example of what we want to work on today, some common entities where an airport meets a railway, but also a building and infrastructure. This is Schiphol Airport. On the left photo, you see the bus station. You see a building where we enter the airport. And then in the right picture, you see underneath the escalators going down to the railway station. So it's a situation where we have multiple clients and are still having some difficulties identifying the right objects, who owns those objects or entities, and how to deal with them. So that's what we want to discuss today in this session. I'm not going to read all of these, but these are some of the challenges in regards to the buildingSMART data dictionary that we are looking at today. I think a lot of those were discussed in the session in the After Summit in Vienna, where Leon van Berlo also joined, and he gave a lot of good answers on some of those questions. But we need this answered before we can move on with the project if we're going to be making use of the buildingSMART data dictionary. Tarmo?
Hello, everybody. My name is Tarmo Savolainen, representing Finnish Transport Infrastructure Agency, and here is Tiina Perttula from Ramboll, and we will tell a little bit about our agency's idea of buildingSMART data dictionary. First, few words about our agency. We are owner of roads, railways, bridges, and maritime routes in Finland. So we have actually all those entities you were talking about. We need every room in our place. We are also a buying organization. We are a client organization. We are only 500 people responsible for all networks in Finland. So we actually use lots of consultants, contractors to do the real work. And information is very important for us. We have had a problem that I'm working very much with project information from design to the construction and to the as-built. But that information and asset information is very much different natural position. In asset information, you are dealing about 78,000 kilometers of roads. And when you make a new road, it's 10 kilometers. So the difference between the nature. We are harmonizing our project information. We want our project information to flow and go all the way automatically to the asset information systems. And we have noticed that the information in the models is the only way to get it. But there is still problems. I will tell why. Then we have 4+ legacy asset information system. We have a different system for road information, railway information, maritime information, and also bridge information. And there we come to the case. We are developing now the project information flow from early design to the as-built. We like to harmonize it there. IFC 4.3 is very important, but there is also documentation, paper documents, many other things. We want that information to store to one place. We want, first of all, that every project works in the same way. Then we want all the as designed and as built information there. And then from there, we want it automatically to the asset information systems. And the problem is there is 4 or even more different systems. There is more requirements. And we have now piloted bSDD, both road and rail perspective last year. And we have seen very promising things that this project information can actually these requirements from these asset information systems can be given to the design and construction automatically by bSDD. And Tiina and Rumble has been helping us, and Tiina will tell a little bit more about that those first few steps pilots.
Thanks, Tarmo, and I'm also wearing the Infra room hat here, so representing the Infra room in this session. So what we tested in bSDD was quite same that the question that the airport room has raised. So how the structures support these type of elements that we want to add to the bSDD. So these are requirements from the register. And as you can see here, so we build up to the test environment, two different domains. They are unfortunately in Finnish, but rata means the rail and the tie means the road. So the rail and the road domain. We do have also the FTIA domain here because we did a couple of more tests with the different structures. So this is the test environment in bSDD, but it's public available, so you can go there and search information. What we did first was to collect all these requirements to the data sheet. So it's kind of almost like the COBE information. So all the requirements. Then we create the JSON file and use the Akka software to put the information into the bSDD. And also the one kind of the idea behind this test was also to test the technical part of the bSDD because we weren't not sure in which way we do need to create, for example, the has part combination between different elements. So this is very good, like first step to get the overall understanding of bSDD as a whole. So there you can see that we do have the properties for specific elements or classification. So this is the track itself, and we will be translated these properties to English. But unfortunately today they are not in English, but it's also the beauty of the bSDD that you can choose the language. So this is in Finnish, but eventually it will be in Finnish and in English. So then it helps also if you have this international teams that works for the FTIA project to then the designer, for example, if he or she is not a native Finnish speaking, to kind of get the same understanding that actually these are the requirements that FTIA has the specific object. So this is very helpful in those use cases as well. But then there is also what we tested in bSDD. So if you have some property and then there you have already the allowed values that FTIA has for the specific property. So also maintaining those allowed values in bSDD. And these are exactly the same values that they need to their asset management register. So just a kind of testing different ways of building these data sets or data requirements into the bSDD. But outcomes shortly with the testing was that the system is suitable and we can use it for channel for rich and diverse data content. But I would say that it's a channel, so someone needs to maintain those requirements. So in this case, it's FTIA, but maybe in the national level, it could be some other bodies as well. For example, the National Classification Organization, for example. Then you need to standardize the data itself. So it could be the predefined data sets, or it could be the properties or whatever, but it needs to be standardized. bSDD itself does not standardize the data itself. So it kind of just a delivery channel for the data. And especially these APIs, they are great potential. So then its data is actually accessible to the end users. So far it has been in the Excels and in data formats like PDFs even. But when the API connector is available, maybe for the main softwares that are used, then there is a huge possibility in bSDD. And then bSDD and IFC together, they enable rich operator-specific data transfer. So there was the FTI requirements. So it really helps the owner to get the requirements to the supply chain. And also what we want to test next is how the IDS work together with this bSDD. Thanks. And one more thing, do you want to mention the...
Yeah, we have had road pilot and rail pilot, and now we continue actually next week the starting meeting for next pilotizing, testing actually how the existing softwares really work with the bSDD, because software vendors always say, yes, they are working very well, but we want to get a share of that one and also to continue piloting. So, And if you want a little bit more, there is in buildingSMART International YouTube channel, there is a presentation from Infra Open in Tampere just 1 month ago. There was Leon Van Berlo talking about bSDD. Tea Kantojärvi from my organization, Niki Tapper from Tiina's organization, talking a little bit more about these pilots. And then Julia, who is here somewhere, Julia talking about RFI, the Italian railways experiences. So please go there and check more.
Thanks.
Me. Okay. So as we are, we have had a lot of technical problems today in another meeting. So if you use Wi-Fi, it doesn't work. If you use Miro, it was very difficult in the neighbor room. But nevertheless, this you talk about a lot of prototypes and tries, and so what we have done this summit, the first time in the history of buildingSMART summits, we did a serious game to get out exactly that. So we had six parties, six teams, supported by 6 software vendors with a set of data, and going through and try to design a model, try to okay, the most important thing, and doesn't work in every team, is reading the requirements was one of the points, it was really cool because to see how everybody digs in and try to solve a model, try to get into the validation of this model. So we have had the validation service and different other services to test the results, yeah? And yeah, we got a good feeling how things working, how the software is working, how the mindset of the people is working. So it's not on every table that it will work. And so I think it's very important to bring things on the table which are working. We have now help me, 5 years of theoretical work behind us in the railway situation, also in the infrastructure point to get IFC 43 to the into the ISO process, and this is yeah. Now it is the time to have things on the table which could be used in the daily work, and this is then I think the next step we should go. And one point is also, we are now at IFC 43, and some rumors said in some sessions they talk about IFC 5. I think it's a good idea to go further, but this lasts too long. We need now things which are working on 43, and if there's something missing, I think maybe bSDD could solve a little bit our problems to standardize upon IFC 43, and that's why we're sitting here, because different stakeholders from the railway room said, couldn't we have a list, something? We have a list of models like you presented it for the Finnish community. We have the list. Can we put them together on the platform, looking around? Is there something completely different? Is there something completely wrong? Is everything the same? So all these things could be done, and I think this is also a reason to join this place here. Do I have something forgotten by my railway colleagues for preparation? G. Again, thank you. Okay, this was not getting an applause for it. Thank you. So, thank you.
So what we have is a Miro board, now that we know that we have technical difficulties.
Maybe so, there's a line from this computer.
If anyone has their computer, here's the, or your phone. I know it's not working very well on the phone, but there is a QR code. I'm going to try to share my screen. I just have to get on my hotspot because the Wi-Fi is not working. Yeah. So, and then I'll share my screen and we can go through the Miro board together. And please, if you have any input, just raise your hands and we can discuss what we have. So 1 minute. All right, you guys can see the screen. Let me turn the microphone on. So to start real quick, we asked some people in the meetings just to kind of give you an idea of what we think we need to be successful. So I asked some people and I just put them in here anonymously. But to give you an idea of what we were thinking about is we want to create a clear overview. We want to know what the other rooms are interested in and get them more engaged. And we want to define a clear goal of a project. So if we're going to move forward with each other, we need to come together and create a project to also get funding so that it doesn't take another 5 years to create something. So that was kind of just 10 minutes that we did in one of our preparation sessions to prepare for this. Moving on. Oh, let me turn all of your things off. Gerard, you want to go through this real quick?
So what we thought is that we are working together, but are we really working together? We're trying to achieve all kind of IFCs, but what we see, there are a number of domains, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is roughly what I say. There's a building domain, there's an airport domain, and there's a rail domain. And what you can see, there are overlapping areas. And what we were interested in is if there are overlapping areas, and what are the elements in these overlapping areas? So that's the first one. But you see that, for example, the tracks are particularly rail. In airports, there are no tracks, more or less, I think. But there is signage. But you see, there are light poles, for example, and that's somewhere in between the rail and the airport. This is only an example, and you will see when we come to more explicit conclusions that there are even a lot of these elements which are in these overlapping areas. But there are particular overlapping areas where all three, like building, airport, and rail, are overlapping. For example, signage, they're in all three. And then the question aroused by at our side is that who owns it? Who draws it? Who maintains them? So therefore, what is the information that's there? So this, particularly today, we want to address that one, is the information. Who owns the information? Who puts forward the information? So we come to a common understanding. And what you see, it's very difficult to see there, you see those green project thing. I think that these are the areas where we need to collaborate. One person said, we are all rooms, but this is the corridor between those rooms. These are the areas which we must come together and say, this room is the owner of it and the other can use it. So, or maybe there's another format we could use. And for that reason, we prepared quite a list. I think I have to hand it over to you again.
Yes. Takes a while, I apologize. Yeah, so we discussed some of the common entities, and we actually have a whole list that we want to discuss with you guys. But at the same time, we did ask ourselves some questions. Gerard just mentioned them. So just in general, who owns it? How many clients are involved when we're working on a project where all of these disciplines meet each other? How do we model the common entities? Do we have one or two models that we merge at the end? A lot of questions that we have in mind. Who owns it? And then looking at the potential of the buildingSMART data dictionary, same thing. Are we going to create one common domain? Are we going to keep our separate domains? Who owns it? Who maintains the overlapping entities? How do we deal with existing classifications, etc.? So those are all questions that we still need to figure out, and that we need to figure out together, I think. And come to an agreement on so that we can move forward on actually realizing it with each other. So what we have done is we have some examples that we wanted to discuss with you guys where we think that, I mean, it says railway meets airport, but we also have the infrastructure here and more rooms kept joining. So bear with me, but these are some examples. And what we kind of wanted to do is go through them with you guys and kind of add them to the different domains. And these are actually all of the rooms here at buildingSMART. So we're very interested in your opinion as well. Like if we, for example, look at a escalator controller, is that applicable in your domain? Is it part of the construction room, or should it be part of the construction room? And when we have mapped all of them, Zoom is not working, to the different domains, then we can see which ones have overlap and start the discussion on how to move forward and potentially create projects to discuss this further. So that was kind of the idea of this session. We can just go through them one by one, and please raise your hand if you want to add them to your room. Yes.
No, a question.
Sorry.
I've been working with the 1346 standard. I have been working with the 8.1346 standard with breakdowns and designations. And we see that for an object in a building, it can belong to multiple breakdowns. So the question, and we want, because several can have interest in the lock of a door, both the electrical system, the passage system, and so on, physical breakdown in the rooms. So we make breakdowns explicitly from the top for all these. And there you can have sort of ownership and requirements, so that when you go in that structure, you can find all other structures and the interested parties then that have access to that. So that's something I would propose here. Yeah, if it's inside a tool, or if it's explicit going down in different databases, that's one thing. We have it in the same database. We import different for the whole environment, so we can go down in these structures. It's a recommendation to look at that.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
And I'm also wondering in which level we are seeking now for the collaboration, because kind of bSDD is also a possibility, like we kind of create a proof of concept for FTIA to have, for example, FTIA specific requirements or properties for specific element. It could be the lighting, for example, even though lighting is also in airport, but nevertheless, that what is the level that we are now want to have the collaboration, because if we use bSDD, for example, to fulfill the needs of the FTIA, then maybe we don't need a certain level of international collaboration, because it's so easy to add those properties to the kind of in top of the and enrich the IFC data. So just to be sure that in which level we are now talking here, because of course there is a lot of overlapping, and there will be more maybe in the future, because this is just built environment. Yep. So have you had a conversation about the kind of the level of the international standardization versus the level of the organizational standardization or the data needs?
I don't think we have yet done so. I think one of the things that started it for us is when we created the baggage handling survey, and we actually got a lot of comments back saying, well, technically a baggage or a conveyor is not airport specific, because you also have them in a mill office, for example. So that kind of got us thinking like, okay, but that's also the case for example, a light mast and other things. So that's just kind of what got us going. No, we have not looked at that detail yet, but that's a good comment. I think we should look into that. And it's just that I don't think the airport room should make that decision. We need to do that together.
And today earlier we did have the asset operation handover conversation, and then there was this bSDD example from the airport room. So kind of that how bSDD could help, for example, these type of maybe use cases. Mm-hmm. So then it's up, or the question is that is it the approach that we just dive deep to the bSDD, or should we find these use cases that what we are wishing that we need to kind of maybe support from bSDD in these specific type of use cases. So the lighting is a good example, but what is the use case for the lighting? Is it just a general lighting, or is it just some more specific?
How we started with this was last in Montreal. We had a discussion. We, as an airport room, are working on particular items. And that what we saw is that a lot of things we are doing it also reflects or is influenced by others. And we were seeking, how do we get a grip on that? So what we said, what you've seen is the design, or at least the existing situation from Schiphol, where multiple functionalities are coming together. So what we thought is, how can we determine who's bringing that particular item in the design? So from a higher standpoint, it's not the already set to stone, this is the way we should do it. At least we started the discussion, who is owning it? And therefore we came to the airport room, and they said, sorry, the railway room. And then we said, can we look together? Because there is a train station in the airport. Where is the demarcation? The demarcation of ownership, the demarcation of design or whatsoever. We at the moment are working on the train station at Schiphol. So they see there is a difference. And there are all kinds of requirements, but how can we bring them together? So, and since buildingSMART is organized in rooms, we thought we should break out the walls and at least start talking. So this is the start, the setup for our meeting today. Therefore, it's a low threshold meeting. Everyone can say what he wants or she wants, but this is the first example. For example, if you have a facade, and then somewhere around, it's down there, who is determining what the facade should do? Is that the architect? Is that the client of the architect, or is it the client of the architect, or it's the stakeholders of the client of the architect? And who are the stakeholders? Who have anything to say about this? In the Schiphol, there is the obligation of these doors in the facade of the terminal, who also cater for escape area for the train. So that means you have a double responsibility there. Today, we try to get the first step in to determine that. And if there are already ways of doing that, we have to find if that helps us. And this is more an inventory than a conclusion in that sense. I see a question there.
Yeah, I'm a bit lost when we say. Hold on.
I'm a bit lost when we say who owns. Are we talking about buildingSMART organization? So meaning who owns is a room being in charge of investigating that, or who owns is it on a true project on the field? I'm a bit, because in the discussion, sometimes I feel we are on the right and sometimes I feel we are on the left.
You're absolutely right. Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's something we have to determine as well. What do we mean with the words we use? The ownership in design, but also in maintenance and operation. And therefore, this is the open discussion for that, to see how we get that.
But just a comment, I think Tiina is also right. We really need to look into a use case, because this is the only way to start a small project, maybe to see how we can collaborate. If we find a use case where 2 or 3 rooms meet together, then we can start looking into the objects and then the needs, what is actually missing, what we want to agree upon, and then try it as well in bSDD. Because then there are other issues as well. Who, in which domain is this going to be added? This particular object, for example. Who is going to maintain this domain? Is it the airport room or the railway room, or are there going to be links together? So there are, on different levels, there are ownership questions.
Since we were joining the airport room, there was always a discussion on signage. The signage in the airport, who also leads to the train, to the bus, to who owns it, and how can we get a grip on that? How can we say who's saying things about it?
I think it's interesting, Gerard, to start the discussion and making the inventory from the buildingSMART rooms. But definitely in all countries, there will be a specific situation when it comes to the real ownership. If you know, only in the Netherlands, we have got big discussions between ProRail, NS, and who is owning what. So that will be, I think, in all countries, and especially not only when upon installation and design, but specifically also during operation and maintenance. But you have to start somewhere. I think it's a very good idea.
I took part yesterday also in the construction room use case management
management and bSDD workshop. And I think those two topics are connected because on bSDD level or on the national level, you can define something. But on the project level, you probably will also have some specific use cases or specific requirements based on something that is only in that project. So we can't put everything in bSDD, but I think we need all of the levels.
Thank you, Miika. There was someone online. Everyone was looking in the room.
External room. I just want to actually support you. We have these two dimensions that feels a bit mixed up. Our rooms that are, well, arbitrary or from historic reasons or whatever. And we have the reality of domains out there. I think the first choice you have to make, is it this dimension or the other one? And then I think, well, the other one, as you said, is it might be more primary than our current room division, where you could say, well, the airport is almost, you have airport, infra, building, but they're not exactly in the same. The airport is more like the aggregation of the buildings and the infra and other stuff. So the other one is safer maybe to start with, is my feeling. But
And that's what we started, and we have to break down the walls of those rooms, and then we have a separate room, and there we can discuss this. Oh, that's not a room, maybe it's the garden. We all go out in the garden, and we have a talk there.
But would it be possible to have something like all the IFC objects and say, prepare a RACI, which room is responsible, which room is accountable? First with what is existing, and if one room comes out with something like we're starting the electrical room, I'm sure we will come with many new objects, then naturally we will be accountable to push them and go and get you for getting your input. So this kind of RACI is probably the first thing we should work on.
There are some questions, but before answering that, what you see happening on the screen now, there is a garbage bin. Hopefully it works. No, it doesn't. He's left. Sorry, you didn't. Sorry. If we copy the garbage bin on the left-hand side. Oh, I moved it. Whoa, sorry. No, where is he? He's in the garbage bin. Sorry, take another one. Maybe a signage element. Sorry.
What's that back?
Yeah, but I did it. You got it? No, I can't. Oh, wait. There it is. If we use the example of a garbage bin, maybe a signage element, but it is in multiple rooms. Coming back to your story, maybe then we can say does any room has, or what is in what kind of IFC naming convention it is there. Then we can see having one example, and I think maybe a signage element is a bit better. That we can see that is both in electrical room, who has a meaning about it, the building room, the airport room, the railway room.
I'm only just showing there, and I'm really happy that you have the train as a logo for the airport room.
Yeah, I have one comment. Sign is a good example, but I'm not sure that if we do understand the bSDD same way now in the conversation, is that what are you supposed to do even with bSDD? So could that be a good starting point, at least for the project? Because if you have the sign, for example, so is the goal here to have the common kind of properties or property sets for sign that are important for each maybe stakeholder or each domain, and then depending on if you are owner organization or some other organization, then you can continue adding more properties to the sign, for example. So is it now the goal to have this maybe common property sets for signs, or what's kind of, because I'm not sure that if we think same way what bSDD should do.
I think that's one of the things that we need to clear on the use of the bSDD. So just a very easy example, say, I don't know how the bSDD is going to be used, but say I'm going to search for signage in the bSDD, and then on the left side, I get to see all of the domains that might have signage in their domain. How do I know as a user which domain to use for the signage? Depending on, and then you come back to the ownership, I think, like whoever owns that part of the model. And those are a lot of questions that we have that we kind of want to, that's what we want to discuss here with you guys. And I don't have the answer to everything. That's something that I really want to, or that we want to discover with you guys.
Sorry to jump in before Tarmo, but the product manager of bSDD is in the room. So maybe before, I mean, if you want to go ahead, I'll let you ask the question, but maybe Arthur can say something about that.
Very fast, because then I think signage is a perfect example, because I think it's every room, because the requirements of road signage, railway signage, building signage are different. So I think this is, if you can solve that problem, it's a great start for this collaboration.
Thanks. Well, thank you, Evandro. I wanted to listen from the back and see how bSDD can be improved to facilitate all of the. Yeah, thanks. No, I wanted to take also part in this discussion. And first of all, as the new product manager of bSDD, you have my full support in what you presented before. And I don't want to provide answer. I can give some suggestions. So this is one way to start talking in the room, defining, okay, what concept do you want to share? The other way is that you have own domains, like you have for Finnish context, for example, and then building the relations, saying, okay, we use signage for roads in Finland. We call it in Finnish somehow. Puhutko suomea? So basically, that's one way to build the relations and show, okay, there are similarities. Maybe they are not the same in all of the contexts. So maybe a column in rails has some other meaning than column in airports, for example. So bSDD can support this distribution of this knowledge. But basically what bSDD is for, in my understanding, is about sharing this, sharing the understanding, not necessarily to have only one single truth there. I would compare it to maybe search engines. When you type column, you can get a lot of definitions of columns in different contexts. But for example, nowadays, when you search in Google, sometimes they give you a result that is built on the semantic knowledge of different definitions, and you get one answer at the top and then all of the others. But basically, I really wanted to hear from you, how do you want to work on it? But I hope that bSDD can support those activities. But there is no one way, because you can use the data structure that is in bSDD in multiple ways. And for example, this is great that you don't need to agree internationally if you want to use it in local context.
And maybe I could add one more, because you asked, but how to know what maybe domain you need to use. So maybe because we tested it in Finland, so it could be that it's requirements coming from the FTIA. So they put to the procurement documents that actually this is the domain under in bSDD, that what they wish the supply chain to use. And then I don't say, or I see that it is also possible that when we have more content in bSDD, so we understand the requirements from different national level, then it could be wise to do maybe some harmonization work. But until we are not there yet, so then it's just a kind of theoretical conversation that have we something in common, or do we not have something in common?
Yes. One comment about this. We had the previous session with eTeam 9 explaining how eTeam is benefiting from being in bSDD. And Jeroen, who was presenting, said that in eTeam, they are really not fans of redundant or duplicated content. So they really want to have clear structure in eTeam, and they put a lot of effort into managing this, how to avoid duplicate meanings and so on. bSDD is a way how we can integrate those different classification systems coming from different organizations, different use cases and so on. So I don't think in bSDD we need to have basically a policy of no duplicates. We should avoid having too many duplicates if it doesn't add any value. But as long as that adds value, I think it's good to have it.
I had an extra question. We talk about domain all the time, but we have different meanings of domain, right? So the domain from the rooms is really clear, infra, buildings. The domain in bSDD is a very generic concept. It's just a view. And it can be the finished view, it can be finished view on a certain aspect, on a subsystem, whatever. It can be anything. But I think it's important to know, what are your plans for the bSDD? Will it be just a big set of, in the end, 1,000 dictionaries that are connected or not connected? Or do you plan some structure there, some core models, maybe 2-level core models, or only 1-level core model, that if an item is in 2 or more dictionaries, or 2 or more dictionaries of the same language or whatever, then we can have a core model avoiding unnecessary semantics, in a sense.
Sure, I see your point. And probably you are aware of bSDD history, because it's longer than 20 years. So there was the core structure before, and everything had to link to this core. So if there was something missing, the core had to be extended. Right now, it's a bit different approach. So we also support having independent content, like content that has no links to something else. And of course, it doesn't give the full potential of bSDD. So when you add relations, you have already like more knowledge there, because you also draw on the knowledge built by others. But no, there's no plan to synchronize into one superstructure.
Isn't that also? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm new on this business, so maybe I will do some joke here. But my name is Ricardo Reis, and I have brown eyes. My hair is a little gray. My face is like this. I'm a civil engineer, so I do airports and I do infrastructure too. Sometimes I use some doors. So, and my domain is in lignin. So I don't know if it could help this approach. You understand what I mean? Because I can see first here that you have infrastructure. Airports, I already do airports, I already do railways, and I already do highways. So why not everything together? And then you have everything, and then you have the other rooms. And then in the other rooms you have, I don't know if you understand what I mean. I'm sorry for this intervention, but
I see.
Was that
I can have a comment shortly, because it's also touching on something that was said before. So you gave the example, Arisca, about when you search for a concept, you can get 20 definitions per point. But also, for some, it's not a challenge, but opportunity. For example, we saw yesterday on the session with practical use cases of bSDD that sometimes, for example, in Plannerly, you first select which domains are relevant to your project, and you only see content that is from those domains. So, for example, you only use eTeam, IFC, WaterNet, let's say, and you don't see other content. And it gives value to this project because you have content that you trust. So, that's one way,
I wanted to refer exactly to the use cases, because going to Arjan and Anouk's presentation, where Arjan had a demo, on selecting the WaterNet dictionary, I think is what it was called. You even were like, oh, this is taking forever because I'm scrolling and scrolling, and say now I, as a person, create a WaterNet 2 domain. How does the user know which one to choose then, or unless it's in the contract of the client somehow mentioned? I think that might become a challenge, just the overload of dictionaries, the freedom that everyone has within the bSDD, and then the user friendliness of finding the right domain that you should be using if it's clear to know which one to use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I agree. This is a challenge that we need to solve. One way is like you agree in the contract on a project anyway, what nomenclature you will be using. you can also agree on which version of WaterNet you want to choose. Is it the one from that's most up to date when you start the project, or is it the one that was released 2 years ago?
We got one here and one there, and maybe and then Tiina, and then one there. Do you want to take my question? It's fine. So I'm tracking them. One here, then Yannick, then Tiina, and then one back there. Okay.
One here.
So my name is Howard Breckebell. I've been working, or I started working on the buildingSMART data dictionary in 2004. So there is a balance here. So if you want to have a perfect dictionary where everything kind of matches, it's a massive undertaking, and it will take a lot of forces and energy to get there. We've tried for 20 years. It hasn't worked. So we need to take another approach, and that means probably what we're doing now, which is to get content in there, get projects starting to use it. There will be duplicates, there will be parallel universes, there will be problems, but there will also be things that are connected, which is infinitely better than what we have today. So the discussion of who owns what and where to put it, I'm wondering if there's so much about the future that we do not know. So we cannot sit here today and decide exactly how things will be. Language develops, language evolve, domains merge, domains split, but we have to get started. So maybe think more in an iterative fashion. So just get started, put stuff in there, start using it. If you have to define in your contract that these are the elements that I actually refer to, then do so. And then 10 years later or two months later, someone will use the same thing and we'll start merging things and start getting going. So I think there is a danger of being too ambitious about what we're deciding today compared to what we can do today and get started to get moving.
Going to Yannick. I like it. This is stressing my opening discussion. I mean, discussions are nice. Actions are so much better.
Yeah, just a comment. I think it's a good idea to bring a share session, the product room, because all of the guys on the product room worked on the how to manage the same thing in dictionaries for many other purposes. And there is an ISO standards on that. And the ISO standards, which is a 23386, explain very in detail how to manage different entities in different dictionaries, how to manage and to interconnect dictionaries. And this topic, it is a topic of governance of dictionaries, and to bring them and those experts on your shared room could be quite a good idea.
Well, maybe it was said already, but kind of I like the that you just start to put stuff there and then look how you can make best out of it. And also, if you want to add here, it's the ISO 19650. So someone needs to put the requirements to the data. It could be FTIA in this case, that these are exactly kind of the domains and now domains in bSDD that we want to use in this project. And that's how I see that kind of how to find the right domains from the bSDD, because I agree that there is a lot of domains at the moment and it's impossible just if you go there to know which one of them you should use. But according to the ISO 19650, maybe the owner or puts the domain.
But should we still in buildingSMART has a buildingSMART international classification? We know which room is taking care of which things, even sign it in every room. But
thank you. Perfect segue. Thank you, Tarmo, because that's exactly what I wanted to say. For example, if we look at some point, let's say we agree on the properties, at some point we agree on the data dictionary and everything. Would it make sense to say, no, this is not airport room domain anymore, this is buildingSMART international domain, and say these are international properties and, you know, have it in every contract, so to say? But then at the other hand, me being a part of some of these development projects I've seen in the past, there have been already property sets defined for objects that are, let's say, internationally applicable. I'm not sure if they're part of the buildingSMART data dictionary already, or if they have been pushed. I'm not sure what the status is there on the data content.
Which ones are you talking about?
For example, Yes.
Not
The,
all,
the standardized. For example, bearing, I know from the IFC Bridge project, the bearing got a property set with one property in it. So the international community could agree on one property. It was major success. But you know, there is this property set, which, let's say, for example, FTA would say, you need to apply to our property sets or to our buildingSMART dictionary content that we put forward, and the buildingSMART International one, and the buildingSMART Finland one. But if you're working in international waters, perhaps you have another one. I'm not sure. But are we perhaps thinking in a too small of a box here? That we should perhaps look across that border? Do we really need to talk about the domains, or does just every one of us have something about signage? Because maybe that I'm interested in the picture, but you're only interested in the text on it, right? Or something like that, to perhaps stir the discussion a bit.
I think we also really need to approach it from a user perspective. So the person, whoever's going to be working with it, how do they experience it? Because today I get a lot of frustration when people are working. So I totally agree with you. I think we need to define that. But going back to the signage or wayfinding, whatever you want to call it, I think that is a good example, because if someone is working, for example, the project that they're doing at Schiphol, where the airport meets the railway, literally and figuratively, how do they know which, say if we have two signages for airports and for railway in one BIM model, how do you know which one to use? Or without someone getting frustrated, oh, now I have to change my domain, or I don't know how it works, but I think we really need to approach it from a user perspective as well, of how that workflow is going. And I agree that ISO 19650 could be a good addition to that, but yeah, that's it.
Just a comment, we also actually in Helsinki, we have also a railway going under the airport. We own the railway and the Finavia is owning the airport. And if we start to make building construction the railway, something there, we can take our requirements from our bSDD and Finavia requirements, and then we just put them together if we need, or don't put it. So I think we can collect. I think bSDD is brilliant because you can use different. I don't know actually, do we have to know which one is in which place? That's maybe a question.
Yes, hi. I'm Julia from Italy. Maybe I can help with the user perspective a bit, because I work for a consulting company and we're helping RFI to create their own domain. RFI is the major Italian railway manager, and they have 90% of railways. So in a sense, we're working on this both with the appointing party and some appointed parties. So for example, on the perspective of the railway manager, they already have their own classification and they're mapping it now to IFC. So for them, it's nice to see their own classification, for example, for a chart panel as a domain, and then they want to see what IFC entity it refers to. And then for them, it would be nice to also see, like on the IFC entity page, for example, links to other classifications where that entity matches. That is an example. And from the, let's say, designer point of view, if they have, let's say, I mean, they normally work with one appointing party at a time, right? So they should know in the contract which domain they have to work with, depending on who's paying for the contract, basically. So in case there is a mixed contract, which is really rare, especially for us, but in case there is one, for example, let's take an airport that has a railway that passes through, okay? In the case, in the contract, they really have to state which model is owned by the airport and which model is owned by the railway company. And in that sense, the domains are different. So if there is a signal that refers more to the railway than to the airport, then it's the RFI domain. If it's a signal that is more, for example, for the Fiumicino airport, then it's ADR domain. And if they are both mapped to IFC, then the IFC class should have the link to both domains. I don't know if that is making any sense to you. Yeah.
I already have the mic. Thank you. So really good analysis, and also connecting with your point previously where you said we have different views on the elements, right? We have different, because we can also collect all the, different stages of the projects, different stages of where we are, different stages of, so the timeline, you can also do what kind of contract it is, renovation, the whole dimensionality of the problem that we are solving as engineers. And should we not perhaps also think about having then different model views for these occasions? I'm not sure how this is connected to bSDD, or if, no answer, no worries, or it's not clear yet. But perhaps this is something that we need, that helps also the end user, right? If I tell you in the contract, this is the view that you have to deliver upon, then he knows which kind of properties, he knows which kind of objects, he knows which kind of relationships within objects, which kind of specifications he has to deliver. And it's, let's say, or more or less clearly defined. And perhaps one of the bullet points of today is like, perhaps we need to define or further develop how to define such views to be able to define that in our contract in the end. Just as another input.
Use IDS, sorry. Yeah, so if you don't want to have a core model or core models, I think the escape is indeed a kind of framework on top, that you have these dimensions, life cycle phase, discipline, technical division between, is it an object or is it a property, maybe some more dimensions, and that gives at least guidance for the end user without a core model, but he knows where to find his stuff. But then you have, of course, the burden to find the kind of framework and agree the framework. So it's, well, you shift a bit the problem, but maybe it's a bit beyond the core model that you don't want, and keep it flexible, but still something on top.
Yeah, you're right. That's, one thing that we need to see it in a way that it's not one core classification that we now develop together as a community. It's more like infrastructure to show there are many different ones, depending on the location, context, and so on. They can be connected because there are similarities, there are differences. And this is a way how we can show it. And I think I also look at it as improvement from Excel-based contractual agreements that you cannot basically scale, to having like a shared place where everybody can pull from the same source without any relations. Then on top, we have relations. So we show similarities, differences, and there are many other additional levels that we can learn from bSDD, such as we can see what content is being used the most, maybe what content is being used by different disciplines, so that there is some shared understanding. We can look at many things that basically bSDD can teach us. So I think this is improvement if we already start at this point that we just share. Any question?
Maybe online?
We just have one comment online from Yuha, who says, or has a question, need of a common classification on the top level, question mark.
IFC? Is it?
It just says need of a common classification on the top level.
I think IFC, foundation classes, is the, not my words, it's the top that we can all agree on. I think this is the map that you can use, not maybe the only one. If you want to use a different one, this is just yet another classification.
Just a comment on that one, on that part. What we are doing within the airport room is basically we have this project, the airport entities project, and we have defined some airport-specific objects. And as it was mentioned before, it's not always clear which part to use from the IFC schema. And what we are doing here within the airport room is that basically we are defining the IFC entity per object, and also we are looking into the predefined types, and we are creating user-defined types. So I see this issue coming again with these objects here. So everyone using an IFC entity, a different one, maybe choosing the same predefined types, maybe creating our own user-defined types here and there. So maybe we can look indeed into the IFC and create our own user-defined types within this collaboration for this 10 or 15 or 50 objects. Just an idea.
Yeah, no comment.
I like the idea, and for example, under the now IFC rail domain, there is rail sign, but maybe I'm not sure how the sign is defined under the other IFC domains. So maybe we could find these type of commonalities and start with the IFC schema.
Good example. Like we often show also the example that in this Dutch classification there is a concept of internal wall, not war, internal wall. Yeah, so basically in IFC there is just a wall and they have a property internal or not. So yeah, with bSDD we can show that, okay, one concept can have similar concept, but only under certain restrictions or certain additional properties that have to be fulfilled to be to say that they are equal. So this way we can also show similarities and differences between national standards, and I guess we won't ever have one international standard that everybody will agree on.
Any other comments or questions I'm afraid to ask, but okay. Yes.
Thank you. I have a similar amount of experience as Håvard there, and I'm going to suggest alternate course. Both actually are right. When we looked at populating the content and trying to make it as most useful as possible, my thought was always to try and standardize on a core set of classes. And if they're relevant, then you use them. And only in a case where you need a class that doesn't exist already, then you create a new one. In the case of signs, we use signs everywhere. And I know that the application of signs and how you use them is different in airports and railways, but a sign is still a sign. And so you can clarify to more detail the use of that sign using properties, but the core concept can still be a sign. And the benefit of doing that approach is that once you've established that a sign is part of your domain, you can a developer can or a designer can establish that they need a sign in a project, give it a sign object, and the railway can read the sign, and so can the airport, and so can buildings for that matter. And the only differences are in the details of the instance of the object, not the class. So my thinking was to take the extra step. It'll be more useful sooner if you do that analysis first. Is there a existing class that you can use? And let's use it. And if you find that you use that class and over time you find that there are so many exceptions, maybe we should take a step back and make 2 classes or 4 classes. Håvard's suggestion, which is equally valid, it's just a different approach, is to make all the extra classes and then later come back and look and say, well, these are mostly the same, so let's just combine that into one. That's really I think, have I got that right, Håvard? Different, approach to the same result.
Yeah, all right. Well, great discussion. Lots to think about, lots of good input. I think this is what we wanted. This is what we were looking for to get this discussion going. It's not up to just the airport room. This is something that we need to do together. So I think there was a lot of discussion, a lot to take in. And like you mentioned, we need to turn this into action points and see how to move forward. But again, your input is needed and greatly appreciated. So thank you guys very much.